if someone doesn't know anything about the moon, but they see the full moon in the sky, they'll say, wow, that is so bright and it's so beautiful. How does it generate all this light? And someone else will come and say, actually, it doesn't generate any light. Actually, it's just reflecting the light of the sun.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem that way to someone who doesn't know, because we can't see the sun at night. We see the light of the moon, the light of the moon, but really the moon has no independent light of its own. It's only reflecting the light of the sun. And in the same way, the personality, when you see a person, when you meet a person, you're seeing the reflection of the light only. What we're seeing in each other is the reflection of the light. We're seeing the moon.
Hello and welcome to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, the host of the podcast, a yoga and meditation teacher and philosophy lover. Each week you will hear eye-opening interviews with the different teachers of the Yandara Yoga Institute, located in beautiful Baja, Mexico, along with other teachers that pass through here. This life-changing knowledge, shared through authentic, heartfelt communication, will help you live a happier, more fulfilled, and connected life. Let's dive in. Hello, welcome back to Curious Ones podcast with Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, and I'm so excited to have my guest today, Talia Sutra. Talia is a world-renowned yoga teacher who lives here in Tel Aviv, where I live as well. She was first introduced to yoga at the age of 6, actually when her mother was starting her process to get over lymphoma. And she was introducing the practice into her life. Then she continued practicing, and in 2010 she decided to leave art school to become a full-time yoga teacher. And since then she has been traveling the world, teaching workshops and trainings all over the world. She has a beautiful app with practices. She works with Alo Yoga, she's on their app, and she's just an incredible teacher. So I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Actually, I think I told you this when I did a private class with you a few years ago, but I was also introduced to yoga by my mother when she had breast cancer, and she started doing yoga, and then she was the one that took me to my first class.
Oh, that's so beautiful to have that in common. And I think it's such a poignant way to be introduced to the practice.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's just something that's hard to go through, and look what it brought to each of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And theirs, of course.
Absolutely, but it just goes to show that sometimes in situations that may seem at first to be really difficult and really challenging, there's actually a lot of grace,
Exactly.
that is in there, embedded in and under the right circumstances can be activated and released. When we're able to meet the challenge, like our mothers had, with a level of acceptance or surrender or hope, then something really beautiful can come out of that struggle as well.
Definitely. I would even argue, in parentheses, that the difficulties are meant to bring the beautiful parts of life. I actually shared something with you off camera that I heard you mention in a different podcast. Maybe you can mention it as well here.
Well, I don't remember exactly what I said. I don't. It's always funny for those people who are like, when you said that thing, remember? And I'm like, I don't remember. But you told me what I said. I think it was something along the lines of the hurt or sometimes pain, when it's acknowledged and when it's seen, it actually then makes the space for the joy or the grace that is being unveiled, or that's that's being received, because we have to become receptive. Essentially, I think what we're trying to say is one has to be receptive to life and receptive to what is already. So I think that it's essentially a way of having gratitude for what is, even the difficult parts, something that I think is really beautiful that I have been saying a lot. I do remember saying this a lot the past few weeks. Is that challenges are probably not optional. You can't opt out.
No,
you can't say, sorry, I don't want that. If you're here on this planet, there is going to be challenges no matter what. So there's no way to opt out. But I think yogis have discovered that suffering is optional. Mm-hmm. So even though the challenge is probably not optional for anyone, their challenges will come and continue to come no matter what. But the suffering, the internal suffering, is able to be diminished with practice, and maybe even altogether eradicated. Because I think ultimately yoga is a practice and a result as well. It's a practice which results in complete acceptance of what is, and there's less and less resistance. Mm-hmm. And I think yogis also know that the more you resist something, it actually makes it expand.
Definitely.
It actually makes it bigger. And
like don't think of the blue elephant.
Exactly. Exactly. So the more you resist something, actually, the more power it seems to, gather. And the more acceptance there is, the more it seems to lose. Essentially, it's like a mind power. So, and I think that's what probably both. I don't know your mother, but she's probably similar. I can imagine to what my mom discovered when she was ill. Is that okay? I have choices here. I can either resist this and be a victim to what's happening to me, or I can see this as an opportunity and maybe even a gift to really discover myself anew and to be reborn. And yes, it's hard, but I choose to accept. I choose to accept this, and it's lovely. I remember my mom, I was 6 years old, but even when she was completely bald, she would take a hairbrush after brushing my hair and brush hair. She had a sense of humor. She stayed so funny, and I never once felt like she was struggling. So people would come up and say, "Wow, your mom is sick. That's so hard." And I always wonder, I didn't say anything, but I was always wondering, oh, no, my mom seems to be okay. She's so happy, So I think that was a very inspiring thing for me growing up to see, not just the fact that she practiced some yoga asana or postures and pranayama breathing techniques. It's that her whole attitude was the attitude of a yogi.
Definitely.
And that really made an impact on me growing up, because what I saw, what we see in life, especially as children, it's not really what we're told, but what we see those closest to us, especially the adults closest to us, how they behave and what they're doing, that really, I think shapes the way that we see the world. And I was really lucky that I had a really strong mother and my dad as well. So I think that was a great blessing, great luck to have that kind of childhood, because I know not everyone has that. So it was a great blessing in my life.
Yeah, my sister and I always mention that in favor of my mom, that when she was sick, we were a little bit older, 13 or something like that, maybe a little younger than that. But we always mention it, that how thankful we are that we never felt scared. She never made us feel like it's something scary. Yeah. So it went by, it went by, she lost her hair, the whole thing. But we only realized when we got older, how severe it was. It was cancer, but we were never worried when it was happening. So we always remember that for her. Mm-hmm. This kind of brings me to the first subject I wanted to speak with you about.
So you have a sentence that you have really made your own. You're very associated with it. Your trainings are named in this sentence. The sentence is.
We'll say it together. 3, 2, 1. Love and all is coming.
So it's an incredible, beautiful sentence, and it just has so much in it that I felt like it's the perfect place to start. And the truth of the sentence, maybe you can speak about what it means to you, first of all.
Okay. Love and all is coming is, probably some of you may recognize it's similar to practice and all is coming. So Pattabhi Jois, the founder of the Ashtanga method, he used to say all the time, practice and all is coming, meaning don't worry too much in your head, don't get too worried and people tend to sometimes get in their heads about things. He said, just practice, leave everything else behind. Practice, everything else sorts itself out. Just do your practice. Essentially, just practice and let everything else be, which is a beautiful. It's true and it's very beautiful. I really like that because all is coming always signified to me a sense of surrender. And obviously, I really connected with practice and all is coming. And then I was love and all is coming started happening because I was writing. I think I was making posts. It was 12 years ago or something. I was making posts and I would do, write practice and all is coming, or I would put a hashtag practice and all is coming. And then I decided to backspace and replace the practice with love. And when that happened, it was
The lights,
yeah.
Fireworks.
Well, no, but yes, inside everything looked the same on the outside, but inside I did feel wow, this is so true. I do really connect with this. It clicked. Yeah, it was something that came through me, and I felt when I saw it, I felt yes, I 100% stand by this. It's true, because when our intent is loving and we surrender everything else, essentially that's it. That's all it's saying. It's when we focus on loving intents, and then our actions therefore are being drawn from the loving intent already, because our action is connected to an intent, whether we know it or not, whether we're conscious of it or we're not conscious of it, it's connected to an internal intent somewhere. So to me, love and all is coming is a way to invite myself and others to look at what kind of intentions we're carrying with us, the moment we wake up, or when we're starting our day, or we're having a conversation with someone, with ourselves, whatever it is. Is it rooted in love, or is it rooted in something else? And when we can establish a connection to love, to look for it, to cultivate it, then our actions also are probably going to be kinder actions, more loving actions. And our relationship with ourselves and the world becomes a more kind and gentle and friendly relationship. And everything else is coming, because when we make the effort of love, when the effort is towards love, I think this is the best way that you can spend a day or your life. And that's why, I stuck with it because I haven't found something better to say.
It feels like words have a resonance, they have a vibration, and it feels like in anything you try, and then you're okay, this is it, in a lot of different directions. When we speak about love, there's an author named Marianne Williamson. I've heard you mention her before. She has a book, A Return to Love, and in the book she kind of divides it to love or fear. And she says basically everything is either going towards love or going towards fear. So all the hate, anger, jealousy, all of that is obviously towards fear, separation. And the positive, supportive feelings are taking us towards love. So actually, the reason I connected this with what we were saying before is I wanted to ask you about shifting our perception from fear to love. As we mentioned with illness, there's a few ways that you can perceive it, and then your intent and your actions follow accordingly.
Yeah, Mary Williamson is definitely someone who's devoted her life to understanding, focusing on love as a force, and something that we innately all possess and have access to, regardless of external conditions. And I think, the idea of saying we can be connected to fear or we can be connected to love essentially is true, meaning in everyday situations, we can always look and see where, like I said before, what is my intention? Where is this coming from? Sometimes when we make certain actions, even unconsciously, the intent inside, the cause of it can be a place of insecurity or defensiveness or fear. And that fear seems to be the opposite of love. And I would also suggest that, it's like we were saying, like what you were saying before, that, maybe it's because of these seeming dualities that, they awaken one another. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I can on the spot immediately remember a point or a time when I made this choice for myself, but I think that it is something that throughout life we have every day, essentially. We don't even have to think of it as in life, but every single day we have opportunities to connect to something inside of us that is open, receptive, has courage, is kind. Or we can find reasons to say why we have to be angry, We have to find the reasons why we're going to be angry, and
we'll always find it.
Yeah. It's because, like I said, challenges are inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
So then, if we want to, all of us can, make a list and say, here's why I'm going to be bitter and resentful and angry. And that's not to say that those feelings are invalid. And I think that's a very important distinction to make. So that is not to say that when we do feel anger, we feel rage, or we feel sad, or we feel upset, or whatever it is, whatever kind of feeling that is not categorized usually as, a positive feeling. Those feelings are valid. And whether you have positive feelings or negative feelings, they tend to ebb. They tend to come and go, and now they're here, now they're there. The issue is more how deeply we identify with that feeling, or or if in some cases we completely disconnect and pretend that it's not there. Of course, it is there, and we just kind of choose to cover it up so that we can go on, with daily life, essentially. Because some feelings, some memories can be too painful to process. So a lot of us just kind of put them away somewhere in storage and hope that we don't have to open it up. Of course, storage in life and also internally is temporary. You can't just hope to store things forever. It will come to the surface at some point. And so feelings, whatever it is that we're moving through, and pain is real. Pain, suffering, deep pain is very real. Love doesn't deny that. So fear, which is a part of pain, it's a real thing. It's probably rooted in past experiences that have shaped who we are now, and so we can't deny them. And fear suggests a kind of, sometimes a care or a deep attachment to a certain way that we know ourselves. All of that is perfectly fine. Love is suggesting that we accept the painful feelings like we do the feelings that we like. So it's suggesting, okay, I'm afraid, that's okay. I'm afraid, that's okay. I can hold space for myself with that, like I would if I was with a 5-year-old who's really afraid. Right? Those are like the natural, organic thing that most people would know to do, is just like hug a child who's afraid or crying or upset. You hug them, you tell them it's okay, you listen to them. You know, you don't just say, stop crying right now. That's not going to help. So essentially learning to treat ourselves and what we're going through with love, with loving awareness, is to me a key. I don't remember exactly when I decided that this was a better choice, but I can verify for myself that it's a wonderful way to live life, is to live life through loving awareness, directed towards myself and towards others. And when I do that, even challenging situations or challenging feelings, firstly, I know that their nature is to come and go, so I don't identify with them. Whatever thought or feeling comes up, I know that that is not who I ultimately am. I respect those feelings and thoughts, I give them space, but I'm not identified with them. So as I feel them moving through my body, and sometimes more painful feelings can be so tangible, you really feel them coursing through you, and that's what makes them so difficult. Anger, all of the feelings that have passion in them are physical. They're physical things. They take over the body. The body wants to do something to release some of the heat and fire that they come along with, and so it's very normal. And there are yogic techniques to learn to manage energy and to learn to manage situations internally instead of immediately allowing the impulse to be released outwards. So I've learned over the years to listen to myself, to hold space for what I'm feeling, and to soften the impact of these sensations through both love, compassion towards myself, but also through logic. I think for me, that's always been a very important part of the practice. Like, it has to somehow make sense and be logical. And what I've found over the years, is that when I use loving awareness towards myself and how I feel, also it makes sense logically, because adding anxiety or worries or anger to an already existing issue never helps. So it just, logically speaking, it just doesn't help. So if I want to have less, let's say I want to have less anxiety in my life, or less depression in my life, or less anger, whatever the issue may be that I want less of, it won't help to respond to it with more of the same. Definitely. It just won't help. So that's also, to me, very the proof is in the pudding, kind of. I have to see. I think a lot of practitioners can point to, it probably is over the years, they can verify that they have developed a more patient demeanor with themselves, that they're more compassionate people, especially, again, towards themselves internally, that they're more aware of what they're going through internally, and therefore, because they've developed compassion and patience towards themselves, this is reflected in their relationships, whether it be with parents, siblings, work relationships, etc. Right? So it's reflected that what it is that we're establishing and cultivating within is then mirrored externally as well, because relationships are challenging. And like I said, those challenges are never going to go away. So sometimes maybe we have to clarify that, because sometimes people think, well, if I practice for this long, how come I still have, so many challenges in my relationships? And they're not necessarily going to stop, but they will. I think with time, the challenges that come with relationships are interesting almost. They become more interesting than infuriating. They become more invitation to expand and to grow and to have maybe really meaningful conversations.
And reflection.
Exactly. Rather than just, kind of meaningless violence or aggression.
You
Exactly.
did this, you did this.
Yeah.
I
So
don't like it, you can't do that to me.
exactly. Of course, it depends. Relationships require that the other person involved is also able to have conversations and to take personal responsibility. But assuming that they are, let's say they are, then it can be that is when a relationship can, move through time together and grow and expand. And it's really beautiful to see.
Yeah. Well, okay, you said so many meaningful, important things in that answer. So thank you, first of all, for mentioning how important it is to also embrace the pain and the hurt and not just label it as something bad. Because as you said, that's exactly when it grows and becomes worse. And in a way, we kind of tend to ignore it, deny it, push it down. Everybody has their way of numbing, their favorite way. And what happened, I've just been thinking about this in the last few months, about the difference of how I experience pain when I try to ignore it and pretend like it's not there, rather than letting it have the space that it needs. And as you said, it's something that really moves through our body. So the pleasant emotions, we like to have them moving through the body, so we just let it happen. But the unpleasant ones, we really try to push it away and pretend that it's not there. And exactly as you said, that's when it grows. Because fighting darkness with darkness doesn't work. It just creates more darkness. You have to bring in the light. You have to bring in the love.
Yes, exactly.
So I love that, first of all. Second of all, you mentioned relationships, which I think is a very, very important subject. And as you said, something we all deal with on a daily basis. So tips on maintaining a healthy relationship in a conscious way. And I would even add, I feel like your husband Ezra is a very conscious person who is on his own path and journey. Maybe you can speak about it also in the perspective of somebody who's in a relationship with somebody who isn't necessarily on the path, and they're trying to communicate this kind of perspective to them.
Yeah. So relationships are something inevitable in life, because even if it's a relationship for a few minutes with a taxi driver, or you're at the grocery store, whatever, every interaction we have with people can be really triggering. If you live in a city, I used to live in New York City, and I would meet so many people who are just so angry that even if you're not walking in the right pace or you're not letting them through, then immediately they show you just how angry they are. And then it's contagious, because also energy is transferred, and it's quite contagious. So one person's qualities, or one person's moods, can really be caught on or transferred quite easily. They're quite sticky things, especially anger. And also sadness can also be a very sticky thing. It seems to linger where that person who's going through that, it seems to kind of linger around them, past their body. It's just it's all around their space. Yeah. And so when we're living with someone, in relationships, when we're really spending time with someone, of course, whoever we choose to live with and spend most of our time with, of course, we're going to be influenced in some way by their presence. So it would take a very, very disciplined and very strong-minded person or yogi to be able to say that It doesn't matter who they're around, nothing will disturb their internal atmosphere. Because for most of us, if someone is on a completely different frequency, then that's going to definitely, we're going to have some kind of confrontation at some point about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If person A is living life in one way, person B is in another completely different way, but they're living together in one space, there will at some point be some kind of discussion or confrontation about what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So firstly, I think who we spend time with is going to impact our life. Who we're going to spend time with is going to really impact our life.
Also friendships, work environment.
Oh yeah, 100%. What we choose to do with our time and who with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are the people that I spend time with? How do they treat themselves? How do they see life? Do they have certain values that I really connect with? And I think for a lot of people, there's a fear that's definitely involved in how they make relationships. So there's definitely some kind of fear involved because we haven't yet developed the security within ourselves. We don't have yet a relationship with ourselves that is self-fulfilling. It's enough. It's the relationship I have with myself is fulfilling. I feel good spending time with myself. I feel I have value. I feel valued and loved just by myself. And because that's not true for most people, we seek validation and friendship and partnership. And those are all great things to have partners and friends and relationships. Those are all beautiful things as long as they're rooted from a place that is already self-sufficient. And when we try and outsource value, like personal internal value from others, that's when it becomes an issue, because already from the start, the seed of the relationship is based on you need to give me something. You know, I need to feel attractive because you think I'm attractive, right? Without you, I don't feel that. I need you. Like sometimes people will get into a relationship because it's convenient, right? Because I'll give you something and you give me something else. And it's not necessarily spoken, but it's understood, right? So like people do this sometimes. It comes, again, from a place of insecurity, of wanting to satisfy some kind of, usually like some kind of survival or sex-based thing, right? So it's either going to be, I need to be with this person because they give me a sense of literal security.
Financial.
It's financial, or it could be even a security in terms of, I feel people have a need, a basic, almost primal need to be attractive and to have someone see them as
And
being
love.
And I think that's a big part of it. So it depends on, our relationship is going to grow from the seed that was planted from the beginning. So if from the beginning, the seed that was planted is, I need this person, maybe not consciously, right? But the seed, whether we know it or not, was, I need this person because I need security in my life and I want to feel wanted and attractive. And that's the deal that we have. I need certain things and he needs certain things, or she needs certain things. They need certain things, and we're going to exchange these energies together. Then when that plant grows, when that seed grows, it's like we get an orange, but we wanted an apple, and then we planted a seed for an orange. A lot of people, this is what happens. From the beginning, they know deep down that they planted an orange seed, but then they get an apple, and they're very upset about it. Like, why is this an apple? So sometimes there's a little bit of that goes on in relationships, and that's where the struggle is. Because once we've been long enough with someone, whether it's a friend or a partner or a romantic partner, then what comes to the surface is all these expectations of like, how come you're not this, and how come you're not that, or you need to be more like this, or you need to be more like that. But from the beginning, there were so many expectations, and they're slowly coming to the surface. And a relationship like this, based on wants and fears, essentially, because I need this person, because without them I'm afraid, right? Without this person I'm afraid with what I'm left over. I'm afraid with the feelings that surface when I'm alone. When I'm by myself, there are certain feelings that come to the surface that I'm afraid of. So I need this kind of mask in order to go on living my life. A lot of relationships are based in something like this. And because of that, there's a lot of issues. When we are in a relationship with someone, whether it's a friendship or a romantic partnership, and there is no, we don't need the person. We want to be with them, right? We want to be with our partner because they bring us joy just being around them, or we just genuinely love them and love spending time together, love supporting them. That's a whole other kind of fruit, a whole other kind of seed. Because from the beginning, it doesn't have requirements. I mean, I love oranges too, but maybe not the best example. But we have to know our intent. We have to know our intent. So I would say that the best relationships are between two people who both have a fulfilled inner life, a fulfilled relationship with who they are. If we seek to find peace and confidence and joy through the other person, that's when it's an issue. That's when it's an issue, because it's never enough. We're always trying to, that person has to give us a certain amount of time and their energy and their listening, or else, it has to be just, they have to be just a certain way for us to feel good in the relationship. So I hope that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is the most important thing that we can do is to have a loving, compassionate relationship with ourselves first, and then any other relationship on top of that it's extra, it's amazing to have. And hopefully the other person is on the same page. And if you're not on the same page, then of course it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So if you're someone who wants to do the work of understanding who you are in cleaning the confusions up, cleaning them up, and getting to a core truth that you can live from, but the other person that you're in a relationship with, or your friends even, are not at all on the same page, then I think it will be challenging. And I think a lot of people who are starting certain practices, or maybe beginning to live life a little bit differently, then it's kind of inevitable that some friendships that are no longer aligned, they begin to fall away. And I think that's okay too. I think that one has to be okay with that as well. That not every relationship in life is meant to necessarily be there forever. Not necessarily. Sometimes some people come and then they go, and that's okay too.
That was just the lifespan of that relationship.
Exactly.
Fulfill the purpose, and it's over. Do you think that a relationship can start with seeds of oranges, from our example of needing from the other person, and then change in the middle?
I think that both people, if they're both able to be really honest and also not be afraid of conversations, not afraid of having communication, which is not always the case. A lot of people find it almost impossible to sit down and talk. It's too painful, and it brings out too much rage sometimes in the body, so they're not able to sit and talk. But let's say the two people are able to sit and talk and reflect and forgive, then yes, I think it is possible. But it's amazing, and those things can happen because a lot of times, especially if, let's say, we're two friends who are starting a kind of journey together, or two people coming into a romantic relationship, in the beginning, we had that kind of lifestyle, and we're slowly changing. We're developing. We've moved through experiences which have shifted our perception. Then I think if the two people are equally taking responsibility for themselves, then it's definitely possible. But there has to be personal responsibility on both ends.
Definitely.
And I just know that for myself, I wouldn't necessarily want to be in a relationship where there wasn't personal responsibility with both parties or with everyone involved.
Yeah. Definitely. I think that's exactly right. I feel like if a change needs to happen, it's first has to be a personal change within each person of this process that you started to mention, and I want to ask you about in a moment. But first it has to be their own personal internal inquiry, and then from that place they come to the relationship as a different person. And I also feel like relationships, they do have kind of a cycle. So maybe the cycle means that the cycle is beginning and then a new beginning. So maybe the new beginning is together, maybe it's not together, but there always is a cycle to each relationship. And each relationship has kind of goes through phases and seasons. And I'm sure that you can say this about your relationship with your husband. Like, your relationship now is not what it used to be 5 years ago. It's a different sort of relationship, and we have that with our family members, with our friends, and obviously in romantic relationships as well.
Hey, I'm quickly interrupting the episode to extend an invitation. If you are interested in deepening into any of the subjects we talk about on the podcast, we offer many different experiences on our beautiful grounds here in Baja, Mexico. From 9-day modules such as sound healing and yoga nidra, to breath and meditation, as well as 200 or 300-hour yoga teacher trainings, and many different shorter retreats. Check out our website, Yandara.com, to see all the information about the different experiences. Let's get back to the episode.
I would love to ask you about what you said about the internal process that we go through, because I feel like one of the biggest journeys for us as human beings is to start to answer the question, who am I? And start to really understand, who am I? Not my external descriptions, not my name even, not where I'm from, but who am I inside? So I would love to hear about your journey in discovering that about yourself and how you guide others to start to answer that question.
I think it's a question that everyone thinks about or wonders.
Not everyone.
No?
Not everyone.
Because I used to always think, I think as a kid even, I was always very curious about, like, I always wanted to understand who I was. And so it's, for me, at least speaking from this experience that I'm having now, in this, what I remember in this life, I've always been tended towards thinking about, I was always trying to understand where there is truth. And I was really interested in truth because it gave me a feeling, when you really get something and it gets you this feeling of,
yeah,
wow. And that was always my favorite feeling. Like, if I could choose a feeling, if I could choose a feeling, that was always my favorite feeling, and it still is. So as a kid, I always remember, if I finally understood something, it meant that I never had to suffer anymore. Like, if something bothered me, but then if I understood it, then I realized, wow, then it doesn't bother me at all anymore because I understand it. Wow. And I figured out that through understanding something and knowing something, we are no longer under its not control, but under its, it doesn't bother us anymore. I
feel like there's a fear of the unknown. when something is unknown and amorphic, we make it much bigger than what it is. But once you see it with your eyes, or like once you know it, it takes away all the fear. Now it's clear, you know what you're facing, and you can start to find the steps to deal with it.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. So I think I've always been, as long as I can remember myself, I have been like this. I liked to think about what I was made up of. And yoga eventually also led me to beautiful philosophies and teachers who led me deeper into this question. And I think the question can be asked in a way the way that it's been really useful for me, the way that I teach it is, what am I not? So instead of who am I, is what am I not? And if you are able to kind of see what you're not, you might be left over with.
Definitely. That's so true.
Yeah.
So true. I had an experience last summer with somebody who really challenged me, and she was telling me, you're this. And in the beginning, I was like looking at myself and saying, like, am I this? Because she's telling me that I'm this. And in the process of realizing that it's not true, I feel like I got to know myself better.
Yeah, so it's very useful to know what we are not.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's easier because the self with a big S or Atma is not a thing. It's not. That's why every time we try and say what it is, we objectify it, and as soon as it's objectified, it essentially, any word or any description objectifies the thing that is non-objectifiable. It is beyond those things. So that's why it's much easier to discuss it in terms of what it's not, and not only discuss, but I think the practice of a yogi, or what most yogis are really interested in, is experiencing that truth. So really experiencing what we are not. And through practice, if we start with a hatha yoga practice, where most people start, then we see through many years of practice and mastery over the physical body, actually the realization is, I am not my body, but I do have this freedom over it. After we get to know the body, we pay a lot of attention to the body in asana and pranayama. We pay a lot of attention to the body every day, and we ask it to move in very specific ways, in a very specific technique, and that allows for physical health and well-being, mobility and strength and flexibility, and really amazing gifts. But also what it allows in a more abstract way is a way for us to see that we are in fact observing and moving our body, but there's a part of us that is doing that, not the body itself. I am not just the physical body that's made up of food. I'm not just that. And I can prove that easily by saying, well, people can maybe take an x-ray or a picture even of my inner body, of my bones or my brain, but no one can see my mind. It's not something that you can see, right? So I know that there are some things that we can see with the physical body, and there are some things that we can't see. No one can see someone's mind, for example. Right, but some people will say, well, there is no soul, but no one can say that there isn't no mind, right? Because the mind is there. Yeah. Everyone can say, yes, there's definitely a mind. We just can't see it. Yeah. We can't see the mind. We can't see feelings.
Yeah, it is such an interesting point because, soul, it's like arguable in parentheses. Right. You can say that it's not there, but nobody can say that there's no mind. And it is a gateway to understand that there's things that you can know that they're there, you can feel them and sense them, and you use them all the time, right. But still you cannot prove that they're there.
Exactly. So, yeah. So a yogi is able to do this over time, is to say, I have a body, I even have mastery over my body, maybe even over more subtle parts of the body. Then the senses are more subtle, right? So the senses are more subtle. We can use the breath to draw inwards into the body, into the more subtle body, and begin to understand our mind. And it maybe even, yogis make an effort to have a power over the functioning of their mind. Firstly, to know the nature of the mind, to know what it's like, to understand the different parts of it, and then to also have a mastery over it, meaning that the mind no longer runs the show. So there's something else, and then we say, okay, so I'm not my body, I'm not the physical body, I'm not my breath or the life force that animates the body. I'm not my mind and my emotions. I'm able to observe that as well. And with practice, I've learned to not just observe it, have mastery over parts of it. So I can't be that because I'm mastering it, right? If I'm mastering all those things, mastering the life force, mastering the body, mastering the mind and the feelings, I'm not those things. So something else is there, right? And then there's a system for this. It's called the kosher system. And we can look at each layer of the human, of the person, of the being, and using this methodology of neti, which is essentially negation, what I'm not. Then we get closer to the truth, not just intellectually, but through practice. So I found it to be a really useful way to ask this question. We can say that over time, even our knowledge and our self-knowledge, our wisdom that we can cultivate and develop, that too isn't how we define ourselves, is not who we are. And even beyond, in the most causal parts of ourselves that are called different things in different ways, different methods, but you could say the deep sleep state or the causal body, even that, or the bliss body, even that isn't who we ultimately are, because that too can be observed, that too can be consciously seen and even mastered. So the thing that we are is beyond, like you said, our name and our form and our gender and all the things that we identify with in this life. It's not necessarily the reflective stuff, it's the light itself. So it's kind of like a good metaphor would be, and a classic metaphor is thinking about the sun and the moon, for example. So if someone doesn't know anything about the moon, but they see the full moon in the sky, they'll say, wow, that is so bright and it's so beautiful. How does it generate all this light? And someone else will come and say, actually, it doesn't generate any light. Actually, it's just reflecting the light of the sun. But it doesn't seem that way to someone who doesn't know, because we can't see the sun at night. We see the light of the moon, the light of the moon, but really the moon has no independent light of its own. It's only reflecting the light of the sun. And in the same way, the personality, when you see a person, when you meet a person, you're seeing the reflection of the light only. What we're seeing in each other is the reflection of the light. We're seeing the moon. Essentially, and the moon is beautiful.
The moon, I was just going to say, that's such an amazing example, because the moon in itself also has beauty. It's not like it's the bad parts of ourselves are less important. It has its own presence, its own joy that it brings to life, its own importance, and yet it's still the reflection of the sun.
Right. So the mind and the body and all its aspects are reflective of the light that is beyond form or name or space and time. And that light inside, that light is really ultimately all that there is. So when we can also prove that logically, because we can say, well, I know that one day I'll die, right? This person or any person, we know that the form that we see is not forever, right? Whether it's a flower or a person.
Cycle.
Yeah, we know that that form is not forever. We may not consciously think about it all the time, but deep down we know that our form, our physical form, our mental form, all of that will one day cease to be as we know it.
Yeah.
So when we study ourselves, we become more and more comfortable with this fact. When we study ourselves, we become more and more comfortable and accepting of this fact. And also with time, we also understand that, well, nothing ever, the truest part of a being, nothing happens to it. So it remains the same. It is a constant. It is a light that never dims. It is never born or it never dies. It just is, and it is one. It's one with all. So there is something that a person can individually, while living, work on discovering within themselves. And once it is discovered, it is known in all. So once a yogi or master knows the truth, the true self, they know everything. They know all selves. They know all, because there is really only one. Everything else it's coming and going. But there is, underneath all of that motion, there is something that is beyond movements, and it's the same in all. And that's why also I think a lot of yogis can have this great understanding and patience and compassion towards others as well, because there is less and less this kind of separation. It's there in a very subtle way, only to the extent that it's useful. It's not there as a defense or a delusion anymore. They're not deluded anymore about the reality, the ultimate reality anymore. So there's just so much more space for love and for compassion and for forgiveness as well.
The koshas are also referred to as illusions, if I'm not wrong, right? And the Maya kosha.
Well, it's a different kind of Sanskrit. Is some sounds sound similar, but Maya with long Maya is the word for, sometimes it's translated as illusion, or really just the world that we live in. And Maya in the kosha refers to composed of, made of. So it means, for example, Anamaya kosha means it's made of food. It's literally saying it's the part of you that's made of food.
Yes.
It's the physical, it's made of food. But it's also recognizing, like I said, some parts of us are not made of food. Like, you can't see a mind under a microscope. You know, it's like when they took Einstein's brain and put it in a jar after he died. I think they were looking. They were like looking.
Just the brain.
Yeah.
Where is the genius?
Where is the genius? Exactly. So you can't see that. There are parts of a person that you can't see. And I think that's really hard for a lot of brilliant scientists. But maybe that is changing, you know, a little bit over time. But that's what, for really curious people who are curious about themselves, yoga definitely offers ways to verify the truth. I can say that because, like I said, I've been curious. As long as I can remember myself in this lifetime, I remember always being really like, what I need to know. Like, it was really pressing to me. And I found that practicing yoga and studying yoga and studying the philosophies that it's related to has really been such a joy, in terms of if you're looking for a way to understand yourself and the world that we live in. There is nothing else like it.
Yeah, what you said brought tears to my eyes, because when we realize that not only are we the deepest, truest part of ourselves, but that part of ourselves is one with everybody and the same as everybody. That just moved me in a different way. So thank you for saying that, first of all. And I think another really important point to mention here is that for me, in my own journey of loving and accepting who I am with all the parts of the personality and the deeper parts of myself, realizing that the parts of myself that I don't like, the parts of myself that don't show up in the way that I would want to, are not my true self, was a very important realization for me in my path. And I think a lot of us suffer because we identify with these parts and we think they are who we are.
Yes.
So what would you say to somebody who's stuck in that place right now?
I remember having thoughts that I thought were not okay. I remember really being frightened of myself and being frightened of where these kinds of thoughts or feelings were coming from, and feeling like I can't live like that. I can't live with myself because I wasn't comfortable. It's like, I'm not comfortable. Who is this? Who is having these thoughts? Because it almost felt like it wasn't me. And I think that probably a lot of people, because I know when I've shared going through something like this, other people have resonated. So I think it can happen to a lot of us where we feel not at ease in our own body. And it's not even just because of our physical body or what our physical body may be going through. It's something else. It's something more subtle. It's something in the mind. It's feelings or sensations or thought forms that come up that then we are listening to, or we're aware that they're going on. Because a lot of times we're not even aware that they're going on. But then if we are, then we may not like it, because they may come with a kind of after effect of a feeling or another thought that then gets us to a place of self-doubt or self-fear or repulsion. It could be all sorts of effects from these thoughts. So yeah, some
thoughts are parts of ourselves even.
Or parts of ourselves, whatever they may be. And so if that's the case, firstly, that's just normal human existence. So it's very normal. And if someone is going through that, they're not alone in that experience. And I think knowing that on its own is also very soothing, to know that whatever it is that I'm going through is a part of also a collective pain. It's not just an individual pain. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of other people collectively going through a very similar pain. I think to me that on its own is already helpful. And then from there we can say, what can I do to allow for some space so that I'm not trying to deny that I'm feeling something that I don't like, or that something's coming up that I don't like. But again, it goes back to this cultivating of inner space that is open. So even though it's hard, can I stop the distractions? So maybe if my home is filled with television screens or music, or I'm constantly on my phone, those are all going to be distractions. Mm-hmm. And when we have those things, then everything seems to be fine. But then as soon as they're off, or let's say the person is trying to go to sleep, and then they all come to the surface again.
Yeah.
Right? So then what can we do? Practical things that we can do are to minimize the distractions, such as screens and music, alcohol.
Friends.
Yeah, all of the things that we do to distract ourselves. We need to, of course, we're only going to actually do this if we really want to. So there has to be a desire for peace. If there isn't a desire for peace, then it's never going to happen, because it's hard work. But let's say you do want to do the hard work, then we need to spend way less time consuming visuals, music, friends, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, to distract ourselves. So we need to do the work then sitting down, not at night when we're about to sleep, but sitting down and really looking at what it is that we're holding on to and making space for it, saying, it's okay, I know you're here, and I'm ready to feel what is there to be felt. You can do some journaling. So for some people, journaling really works. Other people, it really depends. For some people, therapy really works. If it's something that you've been carrying for years and you've never dealt with it, and it's just seeming to get worse and worse because of course, it's never been dealt with. It needs space to be acknowledged. So whatever it is, it needs to be acknowledged, whether it's through journaling, whether it's through having the space with the therapist to talk out loud, to say things out loud. There's different ways that we can work on it, but it will require some vulnerability and the hard work of changing some things practically in our lives. Again, screen time, etc., drinking, partying, whatever it is that you're doing to distract yourself. So it doesn't come without any effort. And when we meet people who seem to be to have self-discipline or practice or values, that's not an accident. That's definitely, they've done the work to get there. So I think that's also something that some of us find really difficult, is the fact that we have to put in an amount of work, because sometimes you want something instantly.
All the time we want something instantly.
And it takes work. It takes time. It takes vulnerability. It takes investing in myself. I want to invest my energy, my time in myself, and understanding myself, and taking personal responsibility, not expecting someone else to come and solve, again, in those relationships. Your job is to make me happy, good luck. That's not the idea. So investing in myself, in my relationship with myself, and again, making small changes, going to sleep a certain time, waking up a certain time, having a practice that I know I'm going to do no matter what, and not making excuses. Whatever that is. Whether it's going to be journaling, or you're going to do 5 minutes of moving your body. I obviously recommend that people do something that involves their body, because I
on Talia's app, of course,
or anywhere. Honestly, just move your body. Even go for a walk outside, but do something. I think that if you're looking for a way to shift energy, then you're going to need to get your body involved as well. It's really important.
That's a very, very important point. And I think you also need to have a lot of courage, because you're going to face things that you will not like to face, but the only way to get through it, past it, is through it.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like if you have a really, messy storeroom in your house or your closet. The only way to do it is to do it. You have to get all those things out and sort through them, and then create a certain level of cleanliness or method of how you're going to maintain that order, and regularly keep it clean. And that's really what a practice is. A practice is a way to take everything out. It takes a lot of courage to take everything out, look at it, sort it. This I'm going to keep, this I'm not going to keep. And then daily maintenance to maintain that kind of order. And think about it, even if you do that in your home, just physically, like in your physical home, even if you think about the experience of having an orderly home or an orderly closet, it's such a wonderful feeling. It's such an amazing feeling. And it's the same, but like times a million when we do that internally to ourselves, taking the steps that we can take to have a relationship with ourselves that is loving, that is pure, that is compassionate and friendly and intelligent. All of those, taking small steps every day, because it can seem overwhelming looking at it, as a huge lifetime project, which it is. But if we take tiny steps every day, actually that's one of the best ways to look at it, is one breath at a time, one step at a time, one day at a time, and let it build with faith and trust over time.
And using your metaphor, first of all, it will get really messy, and then it will be organized.
Oh yeah, that's really important. That's a good thing to say. For sure, it will get really messy at first. You'll say, why did I even start? It was a big mistake.
And after you're at least taking the first steps and things are starting to look a little more organized, starting to take shape, then you get more motivation for the rest.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, exactly.
Amazing. I also want to speak with you about, so now we spoke about how we get to know ourselves, how we get to truly know ourselves. And I think part of that is also understanding what is our purpose here in life. And one of my favorite books is Alchemist. And I have just picked it up randomly in the last few days, actually. And the message there is really beautiful. And basically, in the story, for whoever hasn't read it, please go read it because it's an incredible book. Very simple to read, very easy and joyful. But the message is basically follow your heart, love and all is coming.
Yeah.
So could you speak a little bit about how you found your purpose in life? Or yes, you've definitely discovered your path for sure. You are sharing this path in such a beautiful way. So how you found your purpose, and how does one go about in discovering the reason that we came here to this life?
There's different ways to look at it. Traditionally, you can look at people could begin to look at Dharma as a topic and what it means to them. Ultimately, Dharma is a kind of pillar that supports the truth, the fabric of existence. And you could say there is a Dharma in anything, a Dharma of meaning the right way of doing something. And I think deep down we know what feels right and what doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
I think deep down, if we're not overly numbing ourselves, then we know, okay, this feels right and this feels good and kind and loving, and that doesn't. Mm-hmm. So first, a good way to begin is to develop the ability to discern, because the ability to discern, even though it seems obvious, it isn't. Mm-hmm. A lot of us will find ourselves confused enough in life that we think our joy comes from things that are actually causing us pain.
Yes, definitely.
So it definitely takes a lot of kind of a more sober-minded.
And when you say discern, what are you discerning in? Do you believe in intuition? What kind of role does that play in, do you think?
I think it's even as simple as literally this is good and this is not good. And sometimes we find excuses, and it doesn't even take that much intuition. It's more like obvious, like this is a good thing for me to do, and this is not a good thing for me to do, and then not just knowing it, but taking action. So, for example, let's say the situation is that I know I shouldn't be delay waking up because I know that I want to wake up an hour earlier before I go to work and do some meditation, make tea, and maybe move around a little bit. I know that that's good because I know that it makes me feel good. And I know that when I do that, I feel better and I make better choices in my day and I feel empowered. But I'm still not going to do it. So I know
it takes more effort.
Yeah, Dharma a lot of times takes more effort.
Yeah.
And Dharma you could think of as the thing that is right, and the thing that we can probably individually verify is right, but also collectively. There are some things that collectively humans have decided are right, such as respecting one another, not stealing, not lying, not killing. These are all basic things that all humans, all civilizations pretty much everywhere have decided this is the right thing. And if you break those things, that's not right. And then society will probably have to respond to you in a specific way.
Yeah, those things are very obvious, but there's like more subtle layers to this.
Right. So Dharma is this kind of big word that can be said to be the right way of living. And of course, we know a yogi takes it further. So we say don't kill. But of course, a yogi then has to ask himself, what does that mean? Do I just not kill human beings, or do I also not kill cows? And do I also not kill chickens, or do I also not kill bugs? And what does it mean, right? So it becomes a life of ethics and morality, and we have to ask ourselves all of these questions. And so again, it's not necessarily easy, but I think for people who are more interested in yoga and philosophy, you might find that interesting questions anyway. So it may be a lifetime of questioning and taking action, but it's somewhere to start. When we begin to change our path, the way that we live day to day, to align with certain values, our own personal dharma or path, you could say, begins to emerge. So I would say there is a collective dharma that as human beings, to be kind and to be good, and you could even just align yourself with that, and that would be fulfilling. I just want to be a kind human being.
Yeah.
And that in itself is honestly, if you take that as a mission for yourself and as a vow, I want to be a kind human being and minimize suffering in the world. That is the ultimate, in my opinion, the ultimate dharma. And not just my opinion, there have been many teachers who said that ahimsa is, the paradharma. It's like the highest dharma that there is. But ultimately, for non-harm, ahimsa is non-harm. Yes. Yeah. So that would be a great that for people who are wanting to shift to a more peaceful place. Non-harm is the practice to take, and it makes sense. It's the first yama. It's really the root of so many of our practices, because without it, we can really be led astray. Mm-hmm. So when ahimsa is at the forefront and we are consciously making decisions with this in mind, ahimsa is checking everything to the best of our ability, right? And that will change over time. But when we're minimizing the level of harm we're willing to cause, our life changes, and our perception, everything, our perception changes, and maybe even our desires, because ultimately it's people's desires, what they think they want, that are going to shape their path that they choose. And what they think they want is probably also based on what their parents wanted for them, or their whoever was around them, especially as children and when they were most impressionable. So a lot of people don't know they want it all, but they think that they do, and it's based on, again, impressions.
Definitely.
Certain impressions. I think for yogis, it's becoming, the practice makes it so that we're a little bit more in tune with what it is that we want, and we may find a lot of joy from following ahimsa and causing less harm, and just making a conscious effort to cultivate kindness in our actions. That on its own is amazing. And then it doesn't really matter so much what I do, it's more how I do it that really shifts everything and produces a lot of joy. But we could also have a secondary dharma, I would say. If you could think of ahimsa as a primary dharma, there could be secondary dharmas of, I want to be a yoga teacher, or I want to have a podcast, or I want to be a fashion designer. And then you could do it under the guideline of ahimsa. So whatever it is, secondary thing that you wanted to do, you'll do it under the guidelines of following ahimsa. And that way your path will never cross over to adharma or non-dharma, or the path that isn't going to be cultivating goodness, or isn't going to be embedded in the fabric of truth, which is going to be ultimately supportive, because again, dharma is a kind of pillar. And when we have dharma in our life, we have that pillar that we're with. And then the ultimate dharma is always going to be to know the truth of who we are. Yeah. So in a more abstract way, but I would say the more practical dharma that we do every day is to follow ahimsa, which is the best that we can, and let that direct our second, like, personal dharma of, I want to be a designer. How can I do that? Let's say someone wants to be a designer and they're aware of global warming and they're aware of overproduction and fast fashion. They would make choices that are different based on that. Definitely,
I think that completely. And also, it kind of change. If you have to change what you're doing when you're thinking about non-harming, because when you're happy with what you're doing, you are nicer to everybody, basically. And if you're not happy, then you're not nice to everybody. So just in that perspective, when you, well, I mean, I generalized completely, but you understand my point that just in that you change what you do, because when you're joyful, when you're happy with what you're doing, when you enjoy what you're doing and you love it, and it brings you excitement in your day-to-day life, then of course you're also kinder to other people, kinder to your family, you're more patient with your kids, your spouse, or everybody. So that affects everything. And I think that that is kind of, in my opinion, how we discover our maybe secondary Dharma, as you mentioned it, by following what we love, following what brings us joy, and following what we see that we can contribute to the world.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah. I think I honestly think that for me, what I noticed that having the intention of creating less harm has given me so much clarity in life. And because it's actually when we say no, when we begin to say no to this and no to this and no to this and no to this and no to this based on our values, because it just doesn't align with my values. So I say no, 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 then a clear path emerges.
Yeah.
So it goes back to that neti technique of negation, sometimes not asking, who am I or what do I want, but what do I not want? Mm-hmm. And it clarifies quite a lot.
Yeah, so I think if somebody is listening and they're trying to figure out their path, what they want to do with their life, professionally, personally, I think that's a really good way to go about it. Start to realize, first of all, what are not your values, what you not want to be in the world, what you don't want to show up as, and then from that understanding, what are my values, what do I want to contribute to the world, and who do I want to be in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it emerges on its own when you're aware of and act accordingly. When we know what we don't want and act accordingly with it, then what we do want emerges naturally. That's what essentially is left over. Mm-hmm. And we can begin to cultivate it the more we do it.
Yeah, beautiful. My heart is full from all these beautiful topics. I am really passionate about this, and thank you so much for all this information that you're sharing. I also want to ask, you have two beautiful children, and I wanted to ask you, what have you learned from your two kids?
Well, I'm learning a lot, every day, just because they're two people who are just so open and curious and wonderful. So just watching them, it's possible to learn a lot and to be inspired and to be challenged. I think mostly I've really learned how to manage a lot of tantrums, I have to say. And you have, like yesterday.
The real answer, thank you.
Yesterday, there was a point where Akiva was very upset. He was very tired. And I really wanted to help him, exhale longer, but I didn't know how I was going to do it without being just exhale, that's not going to work. So I started.
Also for grown-ups.
Yeah, it doesn't work. So I started pretending to make bubbles. And I said, look, here's a yellow one. Obviously, there's no color, but kids are always open to things like this. And it's really fun. And you really, so that's what I mean, challenging situations with kids, a parent or whoever is with them really needs to kind of capture their interest and imagination in some way. And that's where they learn and actually magic happens. But it's sometimes difficult to find that spark inside to do that in a challenging moment. But anyway, I said, look, I'm going to exhale I'm going to make a yellow bubble. And I just went, And he was looking, and I was like, okay, it's green and it's purple. And then I was like, it wasn't too interesting for him. But then I said, oh, I'm going to try to make a pink one. I don't think I can do a pink one. That one is really hard. So then he started trying to make a pink one, which is what I wanted to do anyway, because I wanted to shift his, he was like holding on to something and he was very angry about it. And I wanted to change that and also help him actually literally exhale. And then he did those things. It worked because it captured his imagination, so he forgot about the thing that he was angry about. Mm-hmm. But also, he was breathing. And that is not to say I wasn't trying to speak to him about what he was angry about. We were already like 30 minutes in, like discussing what he was angry about, so I wasn't ignoring it. Mm-hmm. I validated his feelings and, narrated it back to him, which I really think is important. I don't mean to just distract him from it, but at that point, it's been like 30 minutes. I wanted to really make progress. He's very stubborn. He's a really stubborn kid. So then that's not really worked because his mind was able to focus on something else. He was exhaling. He was telling me about how he was making these pink bubbles, and we had like so much fun doing that. And then it was, we moved on with the rest of the evening, and it was really beautiful. So I think moments like that, again, when something challenging happens, and like, how do we move past it? I think we can have these moments, whether we're parents or not. But with kids, I've definitely learned a lot about imagination and different ways of teaching and different ways of communicating. And it's really joyful when I'm able to get there with him. That can be really exciting. And Elisheva is, she's 1 and 2 months, so she's very young and she's very different from Akiva. She's really bubbly and extroverted, and she's just hilarious. And so far, it's just been like so much fun just hanging out with her every day. And my kids have taught me also how much I'm capable of, because I didn't necessarily know that I would be able to continue doing what I'm doing and actually do way more than I did before they were around. Doing way more. Wow, so much more.
Wow.
But I didn't know.
That's surprising.
Yeah, no, I realized that. But for me, it's been the opposite of like what I thought it would be like. Because I used to think, if you have kids,
you don't have time,
then life ends. But actually, the opposite happened. The complete opposite.
In what way could you share? Because I'm sure many mothers that are listening would love to hear how you navigate having children and a full-time career and traveling and being a guru, a modern day guru in the world. So, firstly, it wouldn't be possible without my partner. So Ezra is a particular type of person, and it wouldn't be possible without him, because when I go and I teach for 3 weeks, he is like parenting alone, essentially, and he does that really well. So firstly, there was a lot of trust between us and respect, and that didn't necessarily happen without challenge. Again, like, it took us work, but we got there, and we are able to parent like this. So when I need to go, he does this on his own. In the past 4 months, we've also hired a nanny so that I could finish writing the new manual, the new book for the 300-hour training. So we get help when we need it. For example, to write that book, I needed help because I can't do it with Elisheva around all the time. So I need at least like 3 hours a day where I get to write uninterrupted. And now we have this amazing nanny that comes 5 times a week, and she helps us. But so how do we do it? Firstly, I'm a partner. How do you find time for your practice?
Yes, I'll try and explain everything. But I think what's very important to say is it's not just me. It's also when we have a family, it's about the family. So my partner, luckily, is someone who is extremely respectful and kind and able to move through challenges together with me. And we parent together completely. So it's not like a one-person job. It's not just his job. It's not just, and I say job, it's not just his responsibility. It's mine and it's our responsibility together, and we love it and we do it together, and we never feel resentful because we both consciously decided to start a family together, and we're never once resentful for something that we wanted and that we wanted to create. So we Ezra and I both see that, and we in our home have certain things that we follow. We don't, I don't believe, and Ezra too, we don't believe in complaining about blessings. We don't believe in resentment in life. And I think that can be those things, when we do cultivate them unconsciously, when that becomes a topic of conversation in a home, like how difficult something is, like having kids, or sure, it is. And it does, we do need to voice something that's difficult for us. But then there comes a point where also we've said it, let's move on, right? And I think a lot of us get stuck in this point of something is difficult, and we just need to talk about how difficult it is over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Luckily, my partner and I both agree that while some things may be challenging, we chose this challenge. We take full responsibility, and we do our best every day to be the best that we can be every day. So that is amazing on its own. And for me, it wouldn't be possible to do what I do without Ezra.
Yeah.
Secondly, having a schedule that is very clear. So we have a very specific schedule in our home. We wake up very early because our kids are always waking up. This is when they wake up. They wake up around 6, and we go to sleep. My daughter goes to sleep at 6 p.m. So she's awake for 12 hours. She has a few naps in between, but that's her schedule, and it never changes. And her brother, Akiva, he goes to sleep at 7. Mm-hmm. So every day we have a schedule. We know when we're waking up. We know what we're doing after we wake up. We know when the kids are, Akiva goes to school, or Elisheva's having a nap, or a nanny comes, and we build our schedule based on this. Ezra is an artist, so he has hours where he's alone at his studio working, but we manage our daily schedules depending on what it is that needs to happen, and is respectful to each parent's time, individual time as well. Our kids sleep very well, and I know that that's not something it's also not an accident. So we definitely, people have lots of different opinions on sleep and psychology of sleep, but we see it as a absolute primal necessity. I think most people would agree, like food. But for some reason, when it comes to sleep, a lot of parents really struggle. And I've worked with an incredible psychotherapist and sleep teacher who is based here in Israel, but she works internationally. And she's helped me with both children, really teach sleep as a skill. Wow. And do so lovingly and compassionately. And I really think that also makes a big difference in our lives, because Ezra and I have time for ourselves and time for each other. We know when our kids go to sleep, they don't just wake up in the middle of the night. They just sleep peacefully, and they wake up and they're feeling good because they slept the whole night. And a lot of parents, I think, really that causes a lot of harm in families and relationships when the kids don't know how to sleep and have no sleep hygiene. There's no bedtime routine, and there's no boundaries in the home in terms of sleep. And for me, that's been very clear. That's something I wanted. I wanted my bedroom to be my bedroom, and I wanted my kids to be able to sleep in their bed. And a lot of parents feel differently, and that's fine. If people like to sleep with their kids for a very long time, that's their personal choice. But how am I able to have a career? It's because I have boundaries. So I don't sleep with kids in my bed, and there's a time when I say goodnight. And I go and, I like to do my own thing. Yeah. And that's what I do. And I also, a lot of moms and dads may not be able to leave their children for 3 weeks at a time, but I do that. And at first it was a little bit hard. When I first gave birth to Akiva, and the first time I left to film for a week, he was about a year old, and it was really challenging. But also, as soon as I started working, I was so happy. I was so happy that I was doing it, and happy that I went through that challenge. And also, happy that I'm able to trust my child and trust my partner. And I don't need to, like, where are those fears coming from, right? So we have to ask ourselves. For me, that's how I'm able to do it. I'm able to do it because of my boundaries at home. I'm able to do it because of my relationship. I'm able to do it because I'm able to move through the challenge of leaving. So at first it was really hard, but I did it. And I'm really happy that I'm able to do that because having children, I didn't think about this. I didn't think I would ever have kids. But once I did, I also thought, oh my God, well, I probably won't work like I used to. But really the opposite happened because my goals became a lot more clear. Because I have seemingly less time, everything I really do want to do really becomes crystal clear. And then I'm like, well, I've got to do it. My schedule is like, it gives me 3 hours. So in those 3 hours, I better do everything.
Yes.
So there's a lot less unknown time usage. Like before I had kids, I had the same amount of time every day, but I think a lot of it was just free time. Whereas now it's a little bit more structured, and luckily I like that kind of lifestyle where things are structured. And I know what I'm doing when, and for me it works. And I know that might not be the case for everyone, but for me that really worked out fine because the time that I spend with my kids clarified what it is that I want to do in my time when I'm alone. I knew exactly what I was going to do, and I wasn't going to waste the time because it's so limited. Yeah, so then I just have to do it. Yeah. And there's less procrastination.
And I think there's also a really important lesson in that. You mentioned it when we were speaking about our mothers in the beginning of the conversation, that our kids learn from what we do. And you showing them that you have passion to life, that you take care of yourself, that you have an importance of having time for yourself and developing your joy, that is the most meaningful lesson that you can give to them.
I agree. I think also when I was watching, my mom was always a very active person, and my dad. And I think that also I must have learned that unconsciously from them as well, just watching them. But yeah, I think it's never too late to make little changes in your lifestyle, whether it's, deciding you're going to use your time when your kids are napping to do your practice, even if it's for 10 minutes, you're going to choose that instead of something else that maybe you're doing. Or it's never too late if your only free time is when your kid naps, but you have to hold them to nap. That's not fair. Or at least that's what I think. It's not fair because a lot of parents struggle with that, though. Like they struggle because their kids do nap, but they only nap if they hold them or if they sleep next to them. So then they never move, and then they never get that time to fulfill themselves. So I think if you do want to shift that, there is a way to do that as well. There is a way to teach kids boundaries. There is a way to teach kids. Mom also wants to do this, or like dad wants to do this, and they actually respond, and they respond well. And you can speak to children, older children, once they're like 2.5. You can literally have conversations with them, and you can teach them things. Kids are looking to parents to educate them. They won't know unless we teach them.
And boundaries also.
Exactly, and boundaries are part of education. Yeah. So I understand why a lot of parents struggle, and I think we all can take steps, even if it means teaching our kids a way that they're not dependent on the parents for sleep. So if they're independent sleepers, then already we have so much more time for ourselves to do what it is that we want to do and establish. But again, it's going to take some initial perception shifts and some effort to do that. And if we're looking to change nothing, then nothing will change.
Yeah. And I feel like anything that's worthwhile is past that little push of effort that you have to put into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Can you sleep over? Can you stay forever?
I might come back tomorrow.
Please, I have more cookies for you. Please, that would make me so happy. I've enjoyed this conversation so much.
Me too.
Let's move on to the closing curiosity questions. I'm adding one because there's something I'm curious about. So, what is something that you have yet to master, a skill that you want to learn, something that you're working on right now?
Well, right now I'm working on my Sanskrit and the chanting. I am learning the Yoga Sutra chanting. So I completed the first pada, the first chapter, and right now I am studying the second chapter. Not the talking about the philosophy is one thing, but here I'm learning the Sanskrit is a really beautiful language, and the correct pronunciation of each sound is really fascinating and amazing, and that's what I'm really curious about and working on now. Really getting into the correct pronunciation and intonation of each sound and each word, and memorizing the padas, memorizing each chapter.
Why do you want to learn that?
I find it extremely, it's a kind of mind training. So same how you, someone may ask, why do you want to, do your asana practice? What do you get out of it? So you would say, well, it strengthens my body, gives me balance. So I find it to be very good mind training, because again, the differences in the sounds in Sanskrit are really subtle. Once you get used to it, they're not so subtle. They're different. But for example, most languages have a da sound, not necessarily da and da, or ta and ta, or sha and sha and sa. So I'm very interested in all of the Sanskrit sounds and the correct pronunciation and intonation. Firstly, because it's such a fun mental exercise, but secondly, because it has to do with what I've been focusing on for the almost 15 years now. I want to be able to read in the original language, which is what I'm working on. So learning not only Sanskrit is a language based in sound, so it wasn't necessarily written down first, but you could learn also Devanagari letters, which is also what I'm working on, so that I can read the original text in the original language and practice reciting as well. So, for example, with the Yoga Sutras, why I would want to do it besides the amazing mental meditation that it is because essentially I'm able to carry all of that information in my mind. So a sutra is like a code. It's like a code, but inside of it you can unravel. It's like how you could say E equals MC squared, but then to understand it, you'd have to write a full. You'd have to break everything down. And so a sutra is the same way. You could learn a sutra, you could learn to say it. And it's a short, concise statement, but then it leaves so much to be deciphered. And the way that the knowledge was preserved historically in sutra form is because it was easily memorized through recitation. And I feel extremely blessed to be able to carry on that tradition and to carry it inside of me. And to be able to practice that connects me with generations, thousands of years of yogis. So there are so many reasons why I get joy out of it. I also love my teachers who teach me, and it's just a joy. It's a beautiful practice.
Wow, that's beautiful. It moved my heart to your answer. Beautiful. What inspires you?
I think inspiration can be found whenever we're able to see the beauty in something, then it's that's what gives me a sense of inspiration. But also, again, I think my teachers, seeing people who are dedicated to a life of practice and knowledge, that is inspiring to me. Yeah. That definitely inspires me to keep going. So when I see people who are clearly devoted to something. You can see it, right? It's not just talk.
Yeah.
You see it in the results of who they are.
You feel it and it inspires you immediately.
Yeah, I think meeting people like that, meeting people who are meeting people who are living what it is that they're practicing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You said exactly. What is something you've changed your mind about?
Well, I think I already mentioned that having kids, I never wanted to have kids because, again, I was like very realistic as a human being. I was like, well, I have a lot of things I want to do and practice and learn. So kids are going to take my time from that. But that ended up not being true at all, like I said. So it definitely changed my mind about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, this might be a similar answer, but what is something you didn't think you could do and you did?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely one of the things I didn't think I could do. It's not that I didn't think I could do it, I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to necessarily have a family, but now I very much feel that it's such a great blessing that I wasn't so stubborn about what I thought I wanted. I didn't think I could teach yoga, never.
Really?
Like when I was 21 and I had to teach that first yoga class, I was so
the hardest moment ever.
Yeah, I definitely didn't think I would ever do it. Never in a million years. And if it wasn't for, like, I don't know, a lot of really encouraging friends and just the way that fate had it that I kept being scheduled despite being, I think, I was so shy and I was so insecure. I really was, like most people are, especially at that age. But I was really hard on myself, and I was very, I never felt worthy enough. Like I made it about myself for a really long time, and that was the mistake. And as soon as I realized, okay, it's not about me at all, I can forget about me when I teach.
Exactly.
And that's what freed me. But I was really self-consumed. I was consumed with myself and my thoughts and how I wasn't good enough, and the narrative of not being good enough. And that's what I focused on. And then you can't be of service when that's what you're thinking about. So that shifted for me.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so inspiring for any starting yoga teacher to hear that Talia Sutra was afraid to teach.
Yeah, I was for a long time.
And look where you are today.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, amazing. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope? I think hope is something that we generate. I don't know. I don't think you can get. I think it's something that we generate through daily doing things, doing those things that get us on our Dharma, on our path again. Like that. Those things that we do generate hope. Like when we choose to do our practice, even if it's for a few minutes, when that generates a sense of positivity or hope within us. But I think it's something that we generate ourselves.
Beautiful. Okay. And last question, what are you curious about right now?
I am always learning new things, and I think that's like a key in life, is to always stay curious and to always learn new things. So like I said, I am studying Sanskrit, which is something that I could study, for a few more lifetimes. It's just so I'm studying Sanskrit. I'm studying the chanting practices, Yoga Sutra, and that's really my current curiosity. That's where currently it is. My current curiosity is really in giving the time that's needed every day to practice that and to improve and to understand the logic of it, the music. It's not really the musicality, but the understanding all of the everything that just understanding the Sanskrit language and developing the skill to chant it correctly. That's where I'm focused right now.
I feel like it's the vibration, like catching the vibration of the word.
Yeah, it's just very specific. Like it's different than English or Hebrew, which are the other languages that I speak. So, like I said, because of the lengths of each sound has a different length. So some sounds are longer some sounds are shorter, like there could be an ah and an ah. And when we're chanting, there could be a short ah sound and a long ah sound next to each other, but we have to hear the distinction during the chant. So all of that takes a lot of practice. It's just like when you're doing a certain asana and there's a specific way to come into it, well, at least in some lineages, and we want to align ourselves in the posture in a specific way. It's the same way. So it's a skill that I'm really curious about, and that's what I'm working on right now.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
I just, I hope everyone who is listening is having a beautiful day, and that I hope that this was useful or motivating in some way, that hopefully it inspires you to practice and spend sincere time with yourself and with the people that you love.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So anybody watching, if you don't already know Talia, you can find her on Instagram, Talia Sutra. She has a website, taliasutra.com. She has a beautiful app. Anywhere else that they can reach you, or those are the ways?
Yeah, other than that, there's also the Love It All is Coming Instagram and the website for laketrainings.com, and that's where you can find more about trainings.
Amazing. Talia, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been so fun. Really, it's so wonderful to have this kind of conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now, after this time to nurture your mind and your spirit, we invite you to take a moment to consider others. A kind wish might come to mind. Know that what we learn becomes more valuable when we apply it and share it with others. So share this episode on Instagram stories, tag Yandara and I, or share with a loved one so that more people can benefit from it. Our hope is that the search will lead you home to who you already are, to what was always there. We'll be back next week with more inspiration, honest conversation, and insight into the energetic world around us. Thank you for listening and watching.